Rich Planet TV is sponsored by PrepperSafeHomes.co.uk. Protecting you and your home against all forms of home invasion.
Right, I'm in Bonnie, Scotland, and I'm at the 9/11's alive. The next venue, which is, as you can see, the Irish Centre in Reading. I'm just leaving Reading now. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and I'm off to the next venue, which is the YMCA, Indian YMCA in London. Now the event last night was a much smaller audience than I've had. I've been getting almost 200 people at some of these events. There was only about 60 people at Reading. They were clearly concerned and about the corruption and the fact that we're not getting any truth in our mainstream media. And I made it clear at the beginning of the talk that I'm highlighting the issues, but I don't have a solution for our corrupt mainstream media and the fact that we don't get real, true investigative journalism or truth in our media. Anyone recognise this chap? This is the Mahatma Gandhi Hall. So we're in London at the Indian YMCA. The atmosphere was different last night to some of the other talks. They were concerned, definitely. Thank you to each and every one of you for coming along this evening, because, as I've said before, I don't get paid to make the TV programmes, but you pay me in these talks, which comes in handy to keep there would be no TV show if it wasn't for that. Okay. Okay, I've split today's talk up into two sections. I'm going to talk about the 9/11 cover-up. I'm going to talk about the media and money. I'm also going to be announcing a £50,000 reward in connection to one of the subjects that I've been covering. We're going to have a 15-minute break. And in part two, I'm going to talk about my new film, which is Almost Identified Flying Objects. Just to point out that I don't stand here because I think I know more than anyone in this audience. I actually stand here because I don't. Many of the issues on Rich Planet, an underlying theme which comes up again and again and again is this problem with mainstream media. The fact that mainstream media is controlled by a tiny handful of individuals who have massive power over the whole mainstream media, and they can basically print what they want and get away with it. There's very little truth-seeking in our mainstream media, and which enables them to cover up on all of the issues that I try to expose on the TV show. And I don't have a solution to that. That's why I say I stand here and I don't know everything. I don't have the solution to the criminal mainstream media that we have. But I am seeking one, and I put out as much information as I can so that one day perhaps someone will come up with the solution. And I'm not one of these people who claims there is an awakening. A lot of people are saying this now, but I don't personally see it. I don't see an awakening. I think the solution is yet to come, if there's going to be one. I had a normal upbringing. I went to a normal comprehensive school in County Durham. I went to university, I studied engineering, and I worked as an engineer for the best part of 20 years before I got involved in TV. And here's this year's embarrassing photograph. My mother went ballistic when she found I'd got my hair dyed, especially for the graduation photograph. Okay, so I've been covering 9/11 in great detail on the show, and in particular the work of Dr. Judy Wood, former professor of engineering and mechanics, and this is her work Where Did the Towers Go? Now this is 10 years of research. It's the most detailed, comprehensive study of 9/11 evidence in the public domain. I think it's sold approaching 1,000 copies in the UK and 10,000 in the US. I think it's got 125 reviews on Amazon, and 105 give it 5 stars. So this is, as I say, the most comprehensive analysis. And if you compare it to the official line, which is that 2 aluminium tubes caused 2 of the strongest buildings in the world to completely disappear, a preposterous theory that the BBC still have up on their website. Okay, this is from 12:59 Greenwich Mean Time, 13th of September, so within 48 hours of it happening, the BBC think they know why the towers disappeared. Compare that with 10 years of research from a former professor of engineering mechanics and all of the evidence in this book. There's just no comparison. Now, what this book demonstrates quite clearly is that the towers didn't hit the ground. They turned to dust in mid-air, and that's proven with several pieces of evidence. It's proven with the seismic data. There was no clatter, which there would have been if the towers were disappeared using bombs or nukes, or indeed planes, if that could actually happen. So, Dr. Judy Wood's conclusions of this book are that the towers were disappeared using covert technology, an energy weapon. Their state was changed in situ, so they were turned to dust in midair. Okay, and as I say, that is proven using lots of different pieces of evidence. And Dr. Wood also looked at the other competing conspiracy theories. All right. So just for those who aren't aware of Dr. Wood, I'm just going to show a very brief clip just to introduce you to a former professor of engineering mechanics. And I'm talking to Dr. Judy Wood about her book, Where Did the Towers Go? Now then, Judy, we were talking about how the towers came down, and
yeah, they didn't come down.
Okay,
that's the key. The towers didn't burn up, nor did they slam to the ground.
Right.
They turned into dust in midair.
Right. Now, another thing that people who support controlled demolition usually point to, and I've given a lecture on 9/11 in the past, and I had this slide on my screen, you know. So, but I've changed my view on it. Is the cut core columns at, you know, well, they're not 45 degree, but they're, I don't know what angle they're at. But there's an image in your book which is 207A, which shows a fireman, and he's got a.
I would like to point this picture out.
Mm-hmm.
What column do you cut to produce this effect?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that image says it all, doesn't it? The justification and various of the video of the, as you describe it, being peeled like a banana almost.
Yeah, in some places.
Just falling apart. But the 207A shows a firefighter actually with an oxyacetylene equipment next to where the column was cut. So they were rescue workers who were possibly cutting those columns.
These are 700 feet tall. Mm-hmm. I have a strong feeling that the bottom of those columns is where stairwell B was, where 14 people survived, and they looked up and saw blue sky.
Okay, now it's quite difficult to know how to pitch some of these talks, because people who still think Osama bin Laden was involved, right, some of this might go over your head, all right, and I apologize for that, but there are a lot of people here who watch my show who are aware of the information and who have perhaps seen a lot of this evidence, and this really is about the conspiracy and about the cover-up of 9/11, all right. So if you want to be convinced of what I'm saying, that covert technology was used to destroy the towers or disappear the towers, you would need to go on my website and watch 6, 7, 8, 9 hours of information which is there for you to see free of charge. So classified technology was used to destroy these towers. Now, a major part of the cover-up of that, people think that the cover-up is just the fact that there were no Islamic terrorists, right? That's the cover-up that was given to the mainstream, right? But people such as the people in this audience who said, I don't believe that, right? They had to be managed, right? And they had to be managed to prevent them discovering this hidden technology. And this was the second part of the 9/11 cover-up, to keep the technology that did this hidden. And what this has involved is creating bogus researchers, some of them scientists, and groups to steer those questioning the official narrative towards conventional explanations. So it was done by bombs, or it was done by nukes, or it was done by thermite. And they have been very successful at this. Intelligence agencies are well practiced in setting up fake companies, fake pressure groups, fake websites. They do it all the time. It's their bread and butter. And that's what they've done with the 9/11 Truth Movement. One person who has exposed a lot of this is Andrew Johnson. He's been featured on my show a lot. He got involved quite a few years ago now with some of these groups that contain scientists that were trying to find the truth about 9/11, or he thought they were trying to find the truth about 9/11, because Andrew posted some physics equations on a website and he was asked to join one of these groups. But after a while, he realized that these groups, or the leaders of these groups, were being highly manipulative and were actually keeping people away from the truth. Anyone who spoke of something unconventional or strayed from the bombs in the building or thermite theories. So he's exposed a lot of this in his book 9/11 Finding the Truth. So they have created fake campaign organizations and groups. Now, if you've got involved in one of these, I'm not criticizing people who, because this is extremely subtly done. It's very cleverly orchestrated, all right? So I'm not casting aspersions on anyone who's involved in architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth or any of these groups. But what I'm saying is that I suspect that the people running these groups are bogus. These groups all propagate fake theories which are based on conventional explanations. And just to reiterate, this is not aimed at the masses. This is aimed at the truth movement, people who question things. They always campaign for an investigation or a re-investigation. Now, there's already been an official investigation by NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and that was a complete whitewash. All right, so if they're going to do another investigation, why wouldn't it be a complete whitewash again? Why aren't these groups doing their own investigation, which is what Dr. Judy Wood has done? Why aren't these groups campaigning to have people impeached or arrested? They just campaign for a new investigation. Now, I just need to press this point home about explosives and thermite, because it relates to something which happened in the UK in February this year. In 2007, as long ago as 2007, NIST, that's the National Institute for Standards and Technology, who did the official 9/11 report as to why the towers disappeared, they logged a receipt of a request for correction to their World Trade Center reports by Dr. Judy Wood. This request for correction sets out evidence of one or more directed energy weapons being used to destroy most or all of the World Trade Center complex. So what that is Dr. Judy Wood's read the official report of 9/11 and she's saying, I'm a professor of engineering mechanics, I don't agree with the science in that report, so I'm going to challenge it. Here's my request, put it right please. So they knock it back and say, no, we're not going to introduce those changes into our report. So she then appealed, okay, they knocked that back. Now, the only avenue for a scientist then is to sue the companies who were involved in producing those reports for science fraud, which is what Dr. Judy Wood did in 2007. So she took them to a local court, I think it was the Southern District of New York. The judge kicked that out, mentioning the moon landings or something ridiculous like that. She then paid $5,000 to have it heard at the appeal court, and she then took it to the Supreme Court of the United States. So she took it to every court in the land that she could, and she put her evidence into that court. So she was prepared to sue these companies for their bogus 9/11 report over this, right? Now, interestingly, just a few weeks after she submitted her request for correction, another group did the same. This involved Dr. Stephen Jones, Kevin Ryan and Richard Gage. Now, Dr. Stephen Jones was involved in covering up probably one of the most important discoveries of the 20th century, that of cold fusion. If that had been developed from 1989 when it was discovered into a workable solution, it's possible that we could all be driving cars that you don't need to put petrol in. All right? This was covered up in 1989 by this guy. Richard Gage, who's an architect, he's been going around promoting the bombs in the building thermite theory of 9/11. So they submit their request for correction to the official government report, just a few weeks after Judy Wood. Now, I suspect that they did that just because she did, because they wanted a competing conspiracy theory with her work. Now, just this point about thermite. The word thermite in their research did not appear in their original request for correction. So the point being that they were very, very tentative about mentioning the word thermite. Their request for correction appeal does not mention thermite in the context of their research, but only as an arbitrary example of a hypothetical analogy. They probably did not put it in their request for correction because this in itself would have been fraud. So they weren't saying thermite and explosives did this. They were very tentative at challenging the government line because they didn't want to perjure themselves, or they didn't want to commit fraud themselves. And they didn't take it to court, as Dr. Judy Wood did. They didn't try and sue the government for committing science fraud. Dr. Judy Wood did. They didn't take it to the appeal court and they didn't take it to the Supreme Court. They just submitted a request for correction. It's very important to realise this when you decide who you think is telling the truth here. Now, one person who read Dr. Judy Wood's book and was very interested in it, but was also a member of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, was Abraham Hafiz Rodriguez. He's a medical student. And he was trying to highlight some of the work of Dr. Wood to Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Now, the leader of that group, the guy whose name I just had up on the screen there, Richard Gage, he started censoring some of Rodriguez's comments about Dr. Wood from the Architects and Engineers website. So he was preventing any sort of discussion about Dr. Judy Wood's work. He wasn't happy about this, so he went along to a talk that Richard Gage, the architect, those who watch Edge Media will have seen a lot of Richard Gage's talks on EMTV, hours and hours and hours of, oh, there were bombs in the building, right? In my opinion, he's an agent, okay? So Rodriguez goes to a talk where Gage is speaking to challenge him on this.
I supported this organization and I'm a big fan of it, but I found out there was all this evidence that you weren't talking about. There's evidence such as the New York City seismographic data, the University of Alaska magnetometer data, the New York Police Department forensic study that found only one file cabinet of the thousands. The rest of them were missing. The undamaged bathtub beneath World Trade Center, the trains that were down there, the PATH trains, all this information that's easily verifiable. And I was wondering why you weren't talking about it.
Now, I'm not going to present every piece of evidence out there that I can't explain. What good does that do me or you? What's your next question?
My next question is, why didn't you take all this smoking gun evidence, such as the thermite that's supposedly peer-reviewed? Why did you never file that in a court of law, yet Dr. Judy Wood took all the evidence, just a brief sum of that I mentioned.
I'm an architect.
And she filed that in a court of law,
Okay.
and it went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in October of 2009. So
Okay.
why have you never filed this evidence in a court of law to pursue NIST
Well,
and
it's-
the people that engaged with NIST in the conflict of interest relationship to use our tax dollars for those phony 9/11 investigations?
This is an important discussion. I'm just trying to kind of carry it along so others have an opportunity, and I don't want to cut you short. I'm not an
One more
attorney.
part to it. There's just one more.
I'm not an attorney. We're architects and engineers. We have produced the evidence. It's available for you to file it, to do whatever you want with it, make it happen. I'm working 80 hours a week, harder than I've ever worked in my life. I'm managing a large organization of 40 volunteers with almost no funding, and I don't have time to sleep, much less file lawsuits. I don't even know how to do that. No attorneys have come forward yet and said, here, I want to take your stuff to court. And I would say, please do it, for goodness sakes. Next question.
Okay, last part. I just want to know, do you ban all your members that just message you sharing evidence?
Now, Abraham was banned because he put on his profile information which we find confuses and distracts people from the evidence that we believe is most solid. We don't want every theory out there on our website in people's profiles. So we do censor the profiles. So that's what's
I
going
was
on there.
completely banned. And I just wanted to say, if anyone really wants an investigation, please read this book. It is the most important book I've ever read in my entire life.
Rich Planet TV is sponsored by PrepperSafeHomes.co.uk. Protect you, your family and your home against possible future civil unrest.